Hello, welcome to the tutorial on how to install a SYLO node. First of all, I am not an employee or affiliated to SYLO itself. I'm just an enthusiast with an IT background wanting to help other people to install a node for the SYLO network. So first, SYLO is a network, an ecosystem made up of digital consumer, wallet software, application, infrastructure, and developer tools to usher in a world of smart money. We're going to talk about some part of the infrastructure today, more specifically setting up a SYLO node. So for more information about SYLO itself, you can always visit sylo.io. It's basically a decentralized network, a peer-to-peer network, and the nodes, the one we're going to install today, is a key part in that network. First of all, we're going to need a few tools to install a node. The best option to run a node would be on a public cloud provider because they are mostly online 24/7, and if you run a node on your computer, it will only be online when your computer is turned on, and that's not always possible for most people. So it'd be best to run it on a cloud provider. As for recommendations for cloud providers, I'd recommend DigitalOcean or OVH Cloud. Let's go. DigitalOcean is a more widespread one, so if you're not in Europe, I would recommend using DigitalOcean. But I'm going to use OVH, which is a nice cloud provider in Europe. And what you would be looking for is running a virtual private server, a VPS, also known as a VPS. I'm going to continue through the OVH, but if you want to create a node on DigitalOcean, I recommend creating the nodes they have, the servers or the VPS servers they provide are called Droplet. I recommend using a one-click apps and Docker, because Docker is the application or the infrastructure the SYLO node needs to deploy the code and communication stuff to run a node and connect to the network. For OVH, you can just order VPS, or you can search on other sites. You're not bound to use OVH with DigitalOcean. You can just go and search for the VPS on the internet. And an important thing to take a look at this moment is the network, because network will be really important for the SYLO network. And these small instances or the small VPS servers have a 250 megabyte per second unmetered connection in OVH, which is very nice because they don't charge for data usage, etc. Recommendations on how big your machine needs to be, that's not determined yet. SYLO is still developing their network internally, and they're going to release more information soon on what's important for running a node. But for the sake of this tutorial, I won't focus on that now. I'm just going to show you how to set up a node. So if you would be using OVH, you just order a small VPS for now, because at this moment you won't be able to get any money of running a VPS. So that will be in the future. People will be able to get rewards when staking SYLO on their own nodes, and that would be interesting to see if it matches the price, or is the rewards are higher than the price of your VPS. But that's for later. So if you would be using OVH, I would choose the smallest VPS. And as for an image, you should always choose something that installs Docker, pre-installs Docker by default, as does DigitalOcean, because else you would need to install Docker yourself, and that's a whole lot harder than just choosing an easy service that provides it by default. You always need to choose a location. The best would be to choose a location close to home. I already have 2 nodes running, but I'm going to create one in Warsaw. In Poland, to continue, you have mostly you have a lot of options like snapshot or automated backup. These can be important later on when you want to back up your node so you won't lose any data, or when your node crashes or get hacked. You can reinstall it easily via backup. I have already set up a node, so I'm not going through the whole process now, but this should give you the basics on how to order on a cloud provider and what you would need. I have the server, my VPS is already running. I already received the information with the IP addresses and the login information. But before we can connect to our node, we need two softwares. One of them is Putty. This is sort of old school terminal, which will allow you to connect to your VPS and install the node software for SYLO. And the second one is FileZilla. That one we'll need to download our node ID. When setting up our node, we will receive a node ID, and that generates a file which you should save on your computer in case something goes wrong with your node, because that ID is really important. So if you're running Windows, you can just click this link to install Putty and run through the installer. And for FileZilla, you'll need to download the FileZilla client. I've already installed them, so I'm going to continue with the rest of the tutorial. So first, we're gonna need Putty, which is on my computer here somewhere. We will need this one to connect to our server. So when Putty is launched, you'll get this window. So what's important, normally when you order a VPS, you will receive a URL for your VPS, like this one. This is the one for my OVH VPS, or an IP address. I mostly use the IP address because that's safer in my opinion. So first we're going to connect to connect for the first time to our node. This is the information I received. I need to log in as CentOS, and then I need to enter my password. In a Linux terminal, you won't be able to see the password, but if you're typing, the letters are, the characters are automatically registered, so that's no problem. So when I log in, I get this as a default screen. First, we're going to upscale the security of our VPS because we'll be running the SYLO software on our node, and we should try to protect it as much as possible. And also in the future, you will be able to stake your SYLO tokens on your VPS. So it's important that we make it really secure so no one can get in. So first, what we're going to do is log in as a root user, because we're going to change the default username of our server, which is now CentOS. But because every default VPS in OVH with CentOS has that name, it would be better if we change it to something no one knows, because people will definitely try to hack your server. So it's best that we change it. So with this command, sudo azu and a dash, we'll be able to go to the root login, and then we need to set a standard password for the root user. We can do that by using pass_uid. Then we set a password. I'm just using a simple password, but you should use a very secure one. So now we've updated the root password, and we're going to exit our terminal and log in via the root user directly. So we're going to open Putty again, put in the IP address. What might be easier for future sessions is that you save the current IP address under a specific name. I'm going to take SYLO node. So next time we open Putty, we can just select this saved session and click load, and it loads the IP address and other information automatically. So now we're going to open the session again, and we're going to log in as root first, like that. And now we're going to change a few things. First of all, we're going to change the name, the default name of our user. I'll take class because that's my name. It'll be easy to remember for me. So we're going to change the username by this comment. This is an L, not a 1. Might be easy to mistaken. So I'm going to choose class and change CentOS to class. So now the name is changed, but we also need to change the home directory of our new user. Can be done by this command, by using this command. Voila. So now we change the user directory, and then we're going to install a small editor because we're going to need to edit some files, and I prefer Nano as an editor. So go right ahead and install that one. Okay, and then now we're going to change one file so that we have install rights with our new user, which is needed to run SYLO node, docker, etc. So we're going to change Nano. Nano is a command to open, let's say, the file editor, and we're going to edit /etc/sudoers. And then we need to go to the bottom of the file where you'll see the old username, which will change now by the new username class. And we can save the file by clicking Ctrl-X and then the Y for yes. That's it. Okay, so now we should be able to log in as class and not as the old CentOS user. I'm going to close Putty, open it again, load, much easier. So now I'm going to log in as class with my default password of that I got from OVA. Okay, so now that we're logged in as class, we're going to change the default password we received from OVA because we got it via email. And if your email ever gets hacked, they'll be able to trace that password. So we're going to change password to something new. Let's say I'm going to take an easy one. You should take a password with a minimum of 25 to 30 characters and save it somewhere in a password manager or with a computer. Okay, so now we're logged in as class, and we have changed our password. But to generate some extra security, we're going to disable password login, which we use now, and we're going to use private key authentication, which is a bit complex, but it's really easy to install and use. Therefore, we need to go back to the Putty directory, and we'll open Puttygen. Puttygen is going to generate a key for us, which we'll be able to use in our, to configure in our server, and which we'll use to log into our server without a password, which is much safer, and I highly recommend it. The number of bits here generated, you can change that. I'm not sure what the number was again. Just checking. Okay, I'd say we'll use 4096 and click generate. And I will just need to move our mouse over the blank area here to generate some randomness for the key. Okay, so now our key is being generated. And now what I would do is definitely enter a key passphrase to add an extra level of security when we log in to our server. So you can choose a password here. I'm going to take a simple one. And then we need to save the private key. I'm just going to save it under documents. You should save it somewhere safe and back it up so you won't lose it. I'm going to save, I'm going to override it. And then also save the public key. You can also name it just to whatever you want. And then what we will need is this portion of for our server. So go ahead and select everything like this. Copy paste it. Well, first we need, of course, we only need to copy it, and then we're going to edit the authorization keys of our server. So we're going to do nano.ssh, and now you can just type A and U and press the tab key, which will autofill to authorized underscore keys. Okay. So now we have copied this part here of the public key. We can now paste that in our in this file. And like before, Ctrl+X to save and yes to confirm, and press enter, and then it's saved. So now our server knows that we can use a key for logging into the server. There's only one thing we need to change now, which you can do via sudo nano, and then I hope I remember correctly. Go to /etc/SSH and then /SSHd_config, which will open a config file for our SSH, which is a sort of connection we use to connect to our server, which Putty does behind the scenes. So first, we're going to disable root login, which is very important, so people can directly log in as root on the server. Then we're going to enable public key authentication. That can be done by just deleting the hashtag. This is left unchanged, and then somewhere below you will find password authentication, and we'll change that to no. So from now on, if we save this file, no one will be able to log in with the root, which is sort of the super user of the server with all rights to install and delete everything. We have enabled public authentication, public key authentication, which we need because we want to link in with a private key. And we disabled password authentication, so no one will be able to log in with a password on our class user in this case. So go ahead and save this file, Ctrl+X, Y to confirm, and enter. And then we need to restart the SSH service, which can be done by sudo service sshd restart. So now we've restarted SSHD service. We're going to exit Putty again. And just to show you what we've done now is I'm going to try to log into the server again. I'm going to try to log in as class, but now it says password authentication is not supported anymore, which is what was intended by us. So we're going to open Putty again, click our saved session, click load, and now we're going to add, actually connect our saved key. Remember the SYLO node.ppk. For that, we're going to connection first. Oh no, to data. First we're going to data. And use the auto login username. In this case, in my case, is its class. Then we're going to SSA and to out. And under out, you'll find below a private key file for authentication, which is the one we generated earlier, and which you can select simply here. Okay. So now that's done, our connection knows that we need to use the private key and that it needs to log in as class. So now we're going back to session and click save. So all the information, the username and the authentication file are known for our session, so that when we try to connect again, it can load it automatically. Okay, so if you now click open, you'll get this. You'll try to log in as class directly. It will use a public authentication. And here it's asking for the passphrase we use to generate this file or this authentication data. So that's an extra layer of login, of security, which I highly recommend. So I'm going to enter the password for the key, and now we're logged in again. All right, that was sort of the part for setting up the security of our server. Now we're actually going to install the SYLO node, which is a little bit easier than the whole security part, so that shouldn't be a problem. So first, what we need to do is run docker pull dn3010/SYLO node. dn3010 is the actual company behind SYLO. So just so you know, the Docker command should be installed by default if you've used a Docker image by default from your VPS provider. So when we run that command, it will download the latest SYLO node container, which can take a while. I'll probably also put all the comments that I've done in the description or somewhere on a link. It's downloading a lot of important data. Okay, so now that we've downloaded the Docker container, we're going to create a file called which is needed for docker-compose, and docker-compose is an easy service to run the node and save the node configuration so that we can run it later on and restart it with just one single command instead of manually typing all the necessary configuration for the nodes every time we want to launch it. Therefore, we're going to create a file and edit it, which is called docker-compose.yml. And in this file, we're going to copy-paste the example data, which you'll find in the description below. So I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit taller so you can see everything. Okay. So important here. Here's a few things we need to change. First of all, there's two places where we have the IP address, here and here. Then the name of our home folder, which in my case is class, and then RPC user and RPC password. This data, or this username and password, is needed to authenticate to the dashboard of your SYLO node. So first of all, the IP address, which we know from, which you should have received from via email, you should copy paste it and put it here in a file. An easy way to copy paste in a terminal on Putty is just copy it somewhere in your browser, etc. the IP address, and then press your right mouse button, which will automatically paste it where your cursor is, which is pretty nice to know. So we're also changing it here. And then the username is good. And for the RPC user, I'm just going to take something simple like class in this case, and the password I'm going to choose here is test. You should choose a more strong password here and don't use test, because that's not good practice. But I'm going to delete the server after the tutorial, so it shouldn't be a problem for now. So that's done. Again, Control X to save, Y to confirm, and Enter to finish. The next thing we're going to do is download a little new service or command in order to run our Docker Compose, because on OVA, Docker Compose is not installed by default. So we're going to run the next command, which you'll also find in the description. Okay, so that's downloaded. We need to make it an executable, which can be done by this command. And now we're going to make a directory in which we'll store our SYLO node data, which will be generated automatically. So that can be done via mkdir space.sylo-node. That's how we're going to call it. And then we're going to generate our node ID, which is important and will be used to connect to other nodes or connect your SYLO chat app to it, to chat with your friends or family. That's the command I pasted here. This will generate an ID, which you can see here, this ID. You should save this ID somewhere. Voila. Then we're going to, because later on we're going to download this node.id file, which I mentioned earlier, which is a pretty important file which you shouldn't lose, which contains your node identity. So we're going to make it readable so we can download it later on. And then the final command to start our SYLO node, that can be done via docker-compose up -d. This -d means that it will start a process in the background, allowing you to do some other stuff or log out. Voila. So as you've seen here, it created it and it's done. Just to make sure everything went okay, you should run docker ps, which will list all active containers. And as you can see here, there is one container running, which is the one we started now. Okay, so now our node is running. To confirm that our node is running, we're going to access the SYLO dashboard. If you have some more understanding of IT, you'll notice that in the Docker Compose file, we've entered the RPC IP address as 000, and that we're connecting the Docker container to our system via the local host address, which is a more safer way than exposing it to the public. You can also change this 127.0.01 by the actual IP address, which will make the dashboard available over the internet. But I don't really like to do that because it's safer if we do it via a tunnel, which I'll show you now how to do it. To access your dashboard, this will require you to be connected to your node, and then you will be able to see the dashboard. So I'm going to exit now, which will close our Putty session. And then I'm going to start Putty up again. We need to change something here, so we're going to load our saved session, and then we're going to SSH and going to tunnels. So we're creating a private encrypted connection between our computer and our node via this way. So we're going to enter the address that we've seen in the config, the 127.0.0.1, and then the port number, which is in the file. Oh, that's too much. You're also free to choose this if you align it to the one in the config file. And then the source port will take the same. Then click Add. And important now is that you go back to session and click Save. So now that if we open our server again, our connection to our server again, and we log in, voila, we should now be able to go to the node dashboard. So that's 127.0.0 and then the port number. And now you'll see a login prompt, which is, if we go back to the Docker file, voila, is this information. So that is the RPC user we should use here, which in my case is class and tests sign in. And then you'll see that our node is up and running and it's already connected to the network, which is now running 23 nodes and 23 peers. You can also connect to your nodes with the SYLO app, which is pretty easy. You just go and download the SYLO app, and then if you click your profile, you can connect to a node by in the settings of the nodes, which is easy, just by scanning this QR code with your mobile phone, which will connect you to your personal nodes, and you can share this one, for instance, with your family or friends, if they also have the SYLO app, which will enable communication between all you guys and girls, to send private encrypted messages to each other without anyone being able to see what you send to each other. That's the basic concept of the SYLO network, is that you're able to send private data and decentralized over the decentralized network. So even SYLO or the company behind SYLO won't be able to read or see your data. It's completely private, and that's what makes it awesome. All right, so I guess that's everything, and I wish you good luck with setting up your node. See ya. Hi, I'm back. I forgot to show you something, how to download the node.id file, which contains the identity of your node. That's also why we downloaded the FileZilla program. So go ahead and launch FileZilla. Voila. So we're going to create a new site. I'm going to delete this one. Okay, first we're going to do something else. We're going to generate a new or regenerate the private key file for FileZilla, because it uses a different format. So we're going to load our old file, which is the SYLO node private key, enter our password, voila. And we're going to do export it as an OpenSSH key. SYLO node file. Right. I'm going to temporary, because FileZilla will change it itself. Voila. So now we have a node temp file. We're going to create a new site. Let's call it SYLO node. Going to use SFTP, which is a protocol to transfer files over an SSH connection, which we also use to connect to our server. Going to use the IP address and the default port. Then we're going to use a login type key file. The user is class in my case. The key file, we're going to select all files and the temporary file, and FileZilla will ask to convert it to the correct supported format. So we're going to click yes, which will ask our password again, and then we're going to save it as SYLO node FileZilla. So we know that that one is for FileZilla. Voila. So now it's connected. Going to press OK, and then in the top right corner we press the arrow here and select connect to the node, which will ask our password again, of course, safety first, and we'll connect to the node. This will show you the contents of your home directory, and we're going to need something within the .sylo-node directory, more specifically the node ID file, which you should save on a safe location in case something happens to your node, so you won't lose the identity of your node. Okay, so now that we've have our node ID, I think we're finished for real now. Okay, maybe first we, as last, we need to disconnect from our server, and I recommend, because we only needed this site to download the node.id file, I highly recommend to delete this, so FileZilla doesn't keep a record of it. Okay, so that was it. Now you're all set and done. Have fun.